This is my place. This is Westgate-on-Sea in Kent, my home and the home of Name and Place. And the seagulls as well. Until the 1860s, all around me on the cliff tops was just farmland. On the 28th of August 1863, a train left London Victoria Station bound for Margate on what was the newly opened London, Chatham and Dover line. And it came through what was to be Westgate-on-Sea. Where we're standing now is Sea Road, which was considered prime real estate here in Westgate. The land was parcelled up and auctioned off freehold, and it was at that point that the owners could then decide what to do with their plot of land. With the plots of land being sold off independently, there was no common plan, leading to many different architectural styles being developed here. This is St Cecilia's. It was known as West Bay Lodge when it was built in 1904 as a home for Frederick Seton. In the 1930s, it became a private hotel before changing use again in the 1950s, being a convalescence home for musicians, and that's where it received its name change to St Cecilia's, the patron saint of musicians. Changes of name and use are common in older buildings, and I'm sure that you have occurrences in your research, as I have plenty here in Westgate. What is important though for us researchers is to be able to keep a record of all of these different names and uses in each building in our place. Behind me is the observatory, built in 1899, although it never was an observatory, rather it was a private boys' school. In 1924 it was renamed to Fleet House, and it was listed in 1939 as a hotel. When it reopened after the war, it was known as the Randolph, before in 1970 becoming a retirement home when it was renamed once again to the Observatory. This is Exbury, number 63 Sea Road, which was built in 1881 by the Mitford family. Algernon Mitford lived here, and he was the grandfather of the famous Mitford sisters. During their time here until 1904, there were many grand parties with their friends coming from London and beyond. Some of the grand old houses here succumbed to the redevelopment of the 1960s and 70s, but traces still exist, such as in the name of the original house here, Danehurst. A feature found in many of our communities is the War Memorial. The one behind me here in Westgate, looking out over sea, was built in 1923 to mark the 79 servicemen who lost their lives in the First World War, added to after the Second World War with a further 29 names. One of the names on the memorial is Gerard Thomas Manby Colgrave, who died of his wounds in 1917 in France. His home was West Bay Lodge, now known as St Cecilia's. His son, Gerard Francis, was a well-known racing driver in the 1930s. Osborne House was built in 1875 in a style reminiscent of Queen Victoria's home on the Isle of Wight of the same name. Although designed as a home, it was a gentleman's club. Latterly it became a private home called Comberton before becoming a girls' school. This is St Saviour's School, the national school which opened on the 3rd of May 1886 with 107 children here. Its first entry was by the head teacher, Edward Musselwhite, who reported the school building completed and free from damp. The church is often at the heart of the community, and Westgate is no different, with St Saviour's here behind me. Consecrated in 1884 in a service led by the Archbishop of Canterbury, because Westgate is in the Diocese of Canterbury. Its first vicar was Augustus Lyne. The church was funded by the families who came to make Westgate their home. It was very much a hierarchy with numbered pews and paid for seating within the church. This is the site of the first bungalow built in the UK. Built in 1868 by John Taylor, a notable railway station architect, the bungalow was the home of Professor Erasmus Wilson, an eminent London physician. After his death, the bungalow was purchased by Sir William Ingram, proprietor of the London Illustrated News and Liberal MP for Boston in Lincolnshire. Latterly, it became the Rowena Hotel, before tragically being demolished in the 1970s. Erasmus Wilson was a bit of an antiquarian, renowned for financing the transportation of Cleopatra's Needle from Alexandria to London in 1877. His interests are reflected in the naming of many of the early roads around Westgate. Some of the road names reflect Kent's Anglo-Saxon heritage, such as St Mildred's Road, and this is St Mildred's Bay behind me. Actually, Erasmus Wilson renamed it from Marsh Bay because he didn't consider that a particularly attractive name for his home. So why name and place? Well, the fundamental problem when you're researching a one-place study or any sort of project outside of the traditional family tree is how do you accurately record all of that information and collate it in a logical and manageable format. Often people, especially if they've come from the family history world, will turn to their family tree software, which is perfect for the job at hand, recording an individual family. But its fundamental premise is it's designed well to work with people who are connected to each other by either birth or through marriage. One-place studies do not do that. Sure, we can have many families within a place, but there is no connection between those families except the fact they are from the same place. So what do? Well, often people then turn to, say, a spreadsheet, for example, because if you have a census return for your place study, so you've got all the many families that live in that place, it's in a tabular format, perfect for a spreadsheet. And you can add a second census and a third census and so on. Then you can add in more spreadsheets for the lists of all the births from the church or the baptisms, the marriages and the burials. What about looking at wills and adding in a list of those as well? Now try joining all of those together, and that's where fundamentally the challenge comes from. Name and place takes away all that grief from you. In a custom database, you can add in places and the names of the people who live there and the reasons why you want those names and places to exist. The source, whether that be a census return or a marriage certificate or a will or the many other different records. Trade directories, of course, are a big one for us. All of those can go into your name and place project and be connected to the relevant names and places. Remember I said that places can be in a hierarchy, so each house can be a separate place and they can belong to a street and they can belong to the village and so on and so on. But fundamentally, all of those building blocks that make up your research can be connected together to make your whole project. So a key difference with name and place is I treat names and places equally. So what I mean by that is anything that you can apply to a name or a person. So if you think about that, that can be their name, their alias, or if they get married and they change their name, where they were born, where they worked, where they went to school, where they got married, where they lived, different places they lived over time, and all of the sources related to that that give you the information. Now a place can be treated just the same. A place is built, it's given a name and a purpose, as we've seen in this video, and it can change. We've had plenty of houses along Sea Road that started as houses before becoming schools or hotels, and then back to houses again. And that's a key thing that's part of name and place, in that the place stays the same, but its purpose, its use, its name, everything else can change around it. But you can be reassured that all of that information is safely collected together for that one place, with all the sources that have brought you to those conclusions. So if we think about a census, for example, Well, that source lists both the people and the places, and that source can be therefore attached to both the names of the people that listed on it and the places. So that could just be the household, but also often the census lists the birthplace. That's a place as well, and that can all be connected together. So if you want to see how many people in your project were born in a specific location, or looking at a place, who are the people who live there over time, all of that three-dimensional slicing of the data is available with Name and Place. So this is my place, a place full of extraordinary lives, a microcosm perhaps repeated in many different towns and villages across the land. Thank you for listening, and I wish you every success in your research.